Good morning, friends. Welcome back to the conversation. I'm Jan Mickelson. We're going to get a chance to talk with Congressman Ron Paul for this hour. He set aside some time for us to ask him the important stuff. He's here in the state, just now accrued some real estate. He's now bought a pretty good chunk of Ames. For the straw poll. Apparently, you outbid everybody, and you got the what is considered the best spot up there.
Well,
is that next to the porta potties or what? I mean, what?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I trusted some of my supporters to go and represent me, and I will soon find out if they represented me well. But I sure hope it boosts the real estate prices to keep the economy going.
Well, this is the second time you've done this, so you're familiar with how this works, and you had a very spirited Paulista group up there during the last election cycle. Give us your sense of the nature of the support you have this election cycle.
Well, I think it's much greater, and I think we have a better understanding of how the system works and how the straw vote works. So we're pretty excited about what's happening. The issues are really driving the campaign because the issues are so much different than they were. People have come to realize the war's been going on too long. Our civil liberties, as represented by how the TSA treats us at airport, that is an outrage. And the economy is in shambles. And these were the kind of things that we were talking about and trying to call attention to back 3, 4, 5 years ago, even longer for me. But now, those are the issues that everybody realizes that we have to deal with. So I think that's why we're getting much larger numbers at our rallies, and we have a lot more people directly involved in the campaign than ever before.
I was just talking about the TSA right before the news at the top of the hour. I talked about your son, Rand, who is now the senator from Kentucky. He had a TSA, the head of the TSA, in front of his committee, and he basically gave him a what for. It ended up by just basically calling them clueless, which may seem a little bit harsh, but this is what the New York Daily News said this morning, reporting the agency came under fire after Florida woman Jean Weber claimed her 95-year-old mother was forced to take off a diaper for a pat down at the Fort Worth airport last weekend. And that was, I don't understand how, and on what sense could that be appropriate? Was it 95-year-olds who need to wear diapers now are profiled? Or that's just absurd.
Yeah, and like I've said many times, if this doesn't wake the American people up, I don't know what will. I think we're in big trouble if that doesn't get the American people outraged and demanding changes. But it's been going on, and there's so many examples of this. Nobody is made safer by this. It's just such an insult that I am hoping that the people will respond and say enough is enough.
Well, last week I understand that the TSA has been granted union status. So they now have their employees will be allowed collective bargaining, and there will be just another government union you have to deal with.
Yeah, that is true. I imagine we won't go quite to the extent that they're going to go on strike, which probably wouldn't hurt the airline industry. It might even help us a little bit. Maybe the airlines would assume the responsibility for protecting us. But you know, when that whole Department of Homeland Security issue came up right after 9/11, there was a pretty significant argument at the time about whether it should be contracted out to private firms or made with the government agencies.
Right.
And I think the compromise, well, they wouldn't be unionized, but here they are unionized. But the only thing they wouldn't talk about is putting the responsibility on the people who should be responsible for providing safety, and that is the owners of the airlines. They're the ones who are supposed to deal with this, not government bureaucrats and government bureaucrats that belong to unions, or even contracting out might be a little bit better, but it still doesn't solve the problem that we face at the airports.
The economy, number one issue, obviously. Before we get into that, and I'll ask a bunch of stuff about that too, but I've been reading your newest book called Liberty Defined, 50 Essential Issues That Affect Our Freedom. I'm going to tell you, this is a masterpiece. I really enjoyed this because it's bite-sized, it's issue-based, and it looks like this is a kind of a compendium of things that you have written over the years on issues. You've refined a little bit and updated from time to time. This is really primer on American freedom and constitutionalism, republicanism in the constitutional sense, and on sound money. It's just well done.
See, I've written a lot of books and articles and things, that most of them have been more theoretical. This one, as you point out, is more practical. And how do you deal with this problem? How do you deal with this next problem? And it's something I enjoy doing. It took me a while to do it. I have written a fair amount of things, but I'm not a fast writer.
So rather than campaigning, all you have to do is, okay, you want to know how to fix it? Hand in the book. Come and see me in November. I wish it were that easy. I wish the American public was up to that level of personal responsibility and assuming the proper role that Americans are supposed to do.
Yeah, and they will be once again, because people have become complacent and lazy about it, because our country has been very wealthy, and people, succumb to this temptation to be taken care of, cradle to grave, and we've been able to do this for many, many decades, maybe 70 years, that we've become dependent on the entitlement system to the point where we believe there are rights. But the whole thing is the world has changed, and our economy has changed. I don't think it just started in 2008. I believe the downturn occurred 10 years ago. And, I was looking at real full-time jobs in this country. Mm-hmm. We have 1 million less jobs than we did 10 years ago, full-time jobs, and we have 30 million more people in the country. So that's how bad it is. And that's why this dependency won't last. And it might be healthy for us. Maybe we'll have to go back to work and assume responsibility for ourselves. Maybe we'll have to help take care of our families, and maybe our churches will have to be more involved. We just need to get the government out of the way so that we can be productive again. That's my big concern.
Well, I was looking at some of the international news, and you have a great deal of expertise on this as well. It doesn't seem like Greece is salvageable. There's no amount of austerity that they can vote that will actually take up the slack and the per capita debt that they have earned by printing their currency out of existence. But it turns out that's pretty much their per capita debt is pretty much the same as the U.S. per capita debt, and we're making fun of those people. Who's going to bail out Who's going to bail out the Greeks? Who's going to bail out the United States?
And this is to be expected. Greece would fall before we, because they don't have the privilege of printing the reserve currency. The world still will take our dollars for a while yet. But I'd qualify the statement on whether or not Greece is salvageable. Greece will, survive, but they cannot survive on what we're doing. You cannot salvage the system. The debt, they need to just declare bankruptcy. They can't. They're worried about paying up all this debt. Once debt gets to a certain limit, it is never paid off. And then sometimes it lingers. Sometimes it's paid off through inflation. Sometimes there's default. But the sooner they clear the slate and let the people go back to work again. But the big message there is the fact that the people who are seeing they're going to lose their benefits and their free medical care and all, they're rioting in the streets, close to rioting in the streets.
Yeah, they're taking away our entitlements. We earned them. How did you earn them? We voted for them.
That is the problem, and we're not immune from that either. I hope it'll never get that bad here, but it's conceivable, and we sense it already. People say, "Oh, you're going to cut my benefits." People get pretty upset, and then the politicians have to cave in, and they can't go and do the things that they have to do because the people on the receiving end get so upset. So there's a major contest going on right now.
Well, so are we there? There's only three choices: reduce spending, increase taxes, or inflate. The political class has chosen to inflate over that last 10 years rather than doing the right thing. Are we going to experience, are you predicting in essence, if bankruptcy is the cure for Greece, is it also the cure for the United States?
Absolutely. And
what does that look like?
Well, it depends on which way you go. If we don't raise the debt limit, they worry about a default. But the default is occurring constantly because if your dollar loses value, that means they're cheating you and they are defaulting. So if they continue to inflate, then you have the destruction of the currency and you have true chaos. I imagine what will happen is they're going to raise the debt limit a little bit at a time, and they'll keep printing the money. But one way that wouldn't be, I know this is pretty strange for people to even think about this, but we owe like $1.6 trillion because the Federal Reserve bought that debt. Mm-hmm. So we have to work hard to pay the interest to the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. They're nobody. Why do we have to pay them off? Why don't we just take that away from them and reduce the debt by $1.5 trillion or whatever? But what they lose is their skill to manage the money supply and interest rates if they can't buy and sell these treasury bills. But we don't owe that to anybody. The Federal Reserve, how did they pay for it? They printed the money out of thin air. So why don't we just eliminate it and say we don't owe it to you anymore?
Well, wouldn't that affect our bond rating? And I just I saw a news story this morning says if they downrate us just one point, take away our bond rating, we'll drop $100 billion. That's what it'll cost.
It's going to cost it'll come one way or the other. As a matter of fact, I'm not predicting that there's any chance that they're going to default on paying the Federal Reserve. But if you did, that might reassure the bondholders. They'll say, hey, they've just reduced the deficit by over $1 trillion. Now they can handle it. They can go back to meeting their other obligation. It might give some reassurance to the market. But no, the bond ratings, even though today people are still buying bonds and treasury bills because they have no other place to go and they don't trust the euro any more than they any other currency. So I think they will continue to do exactly what they're doing. But eventually the bonds will be they'll be discouraged from buying them, and interest rates will go up.
Well, see. I know the rest. I know the inside story. I know the rest of the story about you, because you say people buy bonds because they don't think they have any choice. But I just saw under your financial disclosure reports, you weren't buying bonds. When we come back here in a moment, I tell people what you bought. Okay.
Okay. No secrets in this business.
No.